It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Tim Schoonveld as the athletic director from Hope College. Tim is a graduate of Hope College and a recipient of a master's degree in educational leadership from Western Michigan University. He has served as Hope's athletic director for approximately 15 years, and he is actually exceptional. So what he doesn't know is that he is a very modest person, and he's very humble. You'll see him on the sidelines doing almost everything. And he has done that for many years. And so one of the things for all of us is to recognize that Hope is one of the most robust and intercollegiate athletic program. We have 12 men's teams and 12 women's teams. He has 8 different venues, and he has over 600 student athletes that he is responsible. And then you begin counting coaches, that number just extrapolates significantly. Hope received its 40th Commissioner's Cup last year, and that's the most of any school in the MIAA. Last year, they achieved 9 MIAA titles outright. We were the 20th Learfield Directors Cup recipient last year, and the Learfield Cup is the top 20 programs in the nation. So you think of all Division III schools, Hope was number 20. This year, our volleyball team is ranked 2nd in the nation. Football team can either be ranked 16th or 6th. And what's most important is all those things are achievements athletically. But what I want to talk about is that Tim has 4 kind of really important values that he has bred into the culture over his years. One is people. And if any of you know Tim, Tim is about people. And for me, this is emotional. I've known Tim since he was a student. I won't tell you those stories.
Please don't.
But Tim is about the student, and he's also about the families of those students, and he's about the good and the hard and the fun and the celebrations of students. And so he's all about those individuals, and he's about their achievement as students and about people, and of course about the athletic ability. And so for one, Tim is about people. Secondly, it's about achievement. And when you walk into Tim's office, you'll see that he is not only the athletic director, but he's also a professor. He also teaches. And so for him, he comes to this job thinking of learning as his primary objective. How does one learn? How does one learn in a classroom? How does one learn in life? How does one learn in their faith? And then how does one learn in a contest? So that's the second thing. Integration. Tim, in his own right, was a strong student athlete. But he's not just that. He's just not this one thing. And I think sometimes when we think of athletes, we separate them out. At some of our large institutions, they cannot even go to class because they have such notoriety that they can't sit in the classroom and be present. Oh, how terrible would that be? Now, for them, it may be great, but how terrible that must be to feel separated out. Tim is about integration. And for Tim, it's the integration of his intellect, his faith, as well as the athletic ability. So integration is in that. And then the last thing is that he's here to witness and serve. And he does that by doing what he does every day. For me, he is an inspiration for me to do what I do every day with the people. And coaches can be tough. And if you can think of 24 different coaches all saying, I need, and I want. He's the one that sits at that chair with wisdom and prayer and compassion and grace and says, this is what we're going to do. Today, he's going to talk about the new landscape of intercollegiate athletics and what it means to have name, image, and likeness. He is one of those people that is very thoughtful about this, and he is learning about this along with all of us as we unfold this new frontier for intercollegiate athletics. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce Tim Schoonveld. Thanks.
Thanks for letting me join you. It's quite a group, so I am grateful to be here. And I would say this before I begin. I have some knowledge of being an athletic director at Hope College and in Division III. I'm not an expert in NIL or sort of the future of what I think is happening in athletics. And so some of today I'll try to specify is going to be my opinion. I'll try to specify, and some of it will be, I think, some of the information that we've gleaned as we've done kind of our research. So I got hired 16 years ago. This is my 16th year. And when I went into my first year, I got an email from Ray Smith. And most of you probably know Ray Smith. The football stadium's named after him, longtime AD coach. And he said, Tim, I wish you the best as you head into your first year as AD. It is the greatest job in all of America. Good luck and God bless you. It's been great. Most days have been great. I feel really, really blessed to be here at Hope. And I think I feel blessed to be at Hope less because it's as the athletic director, and more because Hope is just amazing, and have just been really, really blessed by the people, the students, and all of that. So I'm grateful to be here with you. I think you had Tom Renner here, maybe was it last week? So Tom was given some history. I'm sure that was great. Our theme this year for athletics has been kind of legacy. And so we've turned over quite a few coaches over the last few years, retirements and people leaving. And so we talked about legacy and wanting people to understand like what really matters if you're going to coach at Hope. Because I think there's hundreds of people that could probably be a coach at Hope. I think there's very few that can be the Hope coach in terms of kind of understanding all of that. So thanks again for the time. So what I'm going to talk about intercollegiate brand money and some of the NIL, which is name, image, and likeness. I think the basic deal, what I'd like to do, and Richard shared a little bit of it, is give you a little bit of kind of in athletics what our pillars and our goals are, to give you maybe a different perspective. And most of the kind of name, image, and likeness, and really like money, because that's really what's sort of corrupting sport these days. Opinion, that's an opinion. But most of the money stuff is happening more at the D1 level. And so it's a little bit different than kind of what we're doing here. But I'll give you some examples. I'll share a little bit about kind of the landscape and how we got here. And then I'll kind of end with a little bit of what Hope's doing. So you can at least have a little glimpse into some of the things, because we are doing some of that right now. Some of you know who Tony Bennett, do you know that name? As a coach, not a singer, right? Not a singer, but a coach. Okay. So this is Tony Bennett. Okay. So Tony Bennett, 30-year Division I head coach at Washington State University, and then most recently at the University of Virginia. I would say my description of him would be one of the good guys of coaching. Okay. Integrity filled, Christ follower, really trying to build men. He coached the only team to be a #1 seed in the Division I basketball tournament to lose to a 16 seed. So he coached that team. So he had to kind of deal with that and then own it. And then the next year he won the national championship. And so about 3 weeks ago, he just announced out of the blue he's retiring and he was stepping down. That's like mid-season. So that's kind of a crazy time to be able to do that. And I just want to play about 2 or 3 minutes to give you maybe a little preface of, I think, what coaches are dealing with these days and how it goes from what I would consider one of the good guys, as best I know.
And that's the beauty of this sport. And so I am so grateful. And I think about those pillars Carla mentioned in the first two. Humility and passion. Humility means know who you are and have sober judgment. Passion means do not be lukewarm. Be wholehearted in all you do. And I think those are the ones that caused me at this time to look and have sober judgment about where I was at. And that's probably the thing that has choked me up the most, and the hardest thing to say is when I looked at myself and I realized I'm no longer the.
Did I do that? We need just
no
a
longer
sec.
the best coach to lead this program in this current environment. And if you're going to do it, you got to be all in. You got to have everything. And if you do it half-hearted, it's not fair to the university. And and those young men.
Got some tech savvy folks here. Sorry that I'm not. Slide. I think we're good.
Yeah.
Get some commercials too. We're trying to raise money. So if you'd like to give, feel free.
Straight into your bath with Dr. Teal's. Dumping magnesium completely changed my life.
And that's the beauty of this sport. And so I am so grateful.
All right. You can turn it up a little bit.
Mic 1 is the computer. If you start hearing a ringing noise, you can take that down again. This is mic 1 is your.
Just hit the arrow. All right.
Or you can do it here.
Okay. If you need it up, just raise your hand. That'd be great. Sorry. We'll start that over.
And I think about those pillars Carla mentioned in the first two, humility and passion. Humility means know who you are and have sober judgment. And passion means do not be lukewarm, be wholehearted in all you do. And I think those are the ones that caused me at this time to look and have sober judgment about where I was at. And that's probably the thing that has choked me up the most, and the hardest thing to say is when I looked at myself and I realized I'm no longer the best coach to lead this program in this current environment. And if you're going to do it, you got to be all in. You got to have everything. And if you do it half-hearted, it's not fair to the university and those young men. So, and looking at it, that's what made me step down. There's still a way in this environment. There's a way with Carla and President Ryan and the board to do it and hold to our values. But it's complicated. And to admit, honestly, that I'm not equipped to do this as humbly, but it honors the pillars. And maybe that's why I knew I was going to do this. And sorry, and you can make fun of me later. My son, he's like, geez, Dad, get a hold of yourself. I know it. I feel it. Just make fun of one of my friends every time he gets interviewed that gets emotional. He knows who I'm talking about. But that's it. This game, I think it's right for players, student athletes to receive revenue. Please don't mistake me. I do. I think it is. But the game and college athletics is not in a healthy spot. It's not. And there needs to be change. And it's not going to go back. I think I was equipped to do the job here the old way. And that's who I am. And that's how it was. And my staff has buoyed me along to get to this point. But there needs to be change. It's going to be closer to a professional model, Coach Carlisle. I think it is, where there's got to be collective bargaining. There has to be a restriction on the salary pool that teams can spend. There has to be transfer regulation restrictions. There has to be some limits on the agent involvement to these young guys. And there are good agents and there are bad agents, and
I think that gives you like a glimpse. And if you want sort of a picture of hope, we are we're just like the trickle down. So when you start seeing things, I think in like professional sports, then you start seeing it trickle down into Division I and Division II, and then like Division III starts being the case of. And I think to give you some ideas of that, sponsorships, businesses. So when I came in, again, Ray Smith, we will not have any sponsors. We won't have signage. We won't have any of that type of stuff. And it just like life has just sort of changed. And so we're trying, I think, very deeply to hold true to the values of Hope College and what we believe is the most effective way of sort of doing sport and being in this context while still living in like 2024, that it just does change. And I think it's changed a lot in my world. So just to give you a little, let's see if I can get this here. Just to give you a little glimpse into our world. We have 3 pillars in Hope Athletics, okay? And thankful to Richard for, we used to have 2, and then he got after me for this one. Like, I can't believe you don't have anything about academics in there. And so we would say 3 pillars. So our number 1 pillar really is academic success. We're trying to graduate students as effectively as we can. And so just kind of to give you a glimpse into that, all 22 teams, Richard said 24, we do count, like hockey gets counted in there, which is a club, and cheerleading gets counted in there. So we do have teams on those that aren't actually intercollegiate NCAA teams. All 22 teams had a team GPA of 3.0 or higher. Like every team we had cumulative, like, which I think we were really proud of. And we've been striving for that every year, and finally hit that last year. 18 teams earned the MIAA GPA award, which is a 3.3 GPA or higher. So 18 of the 22 actually had a team cumulative of 3.3 or higher. And then 292 out of our 550, the numbers fluctuate between probably 550 and 650, depending on how you count athletes. So if you run cross country, you also run indoor track and you also run outdoor track. So sometimes they count those as like 3 times, depending on what we need. We count them once or 3 times. So if we need something, then we do that. But I think like the picture for us is really like, hey, we want students to graduate. And this is what we're striving for. And so the metrics that we're looking for, academic success. So our first pillar really is academic success. Our second pillar would be competitive excellence. And when I talk to the parents, is like, we're trying to win. Like, this isn't like IMs or like club, like we're trying to win. We don't always win. We lost last night, unfortunately, in soccer. But we're really trying to win. But I think like hope the heart of what maybe we're about becomes much more, we're not a win at all costs. And I think that's one of the things that's really plaguing a lot of sport now is when you see some coaches who are just completely out of control with how they treat athletes, what they're doing, what their expectations are. It's really all driven by wins and then kind of money. So just to give you a picture, so 10 league champions last year out of the 22 teams that participated, where Richard said we were awarded the Commissioner's Cup for the 40th time, which is the cumulative of all our teams. I think that's one of the things we're probably most proud of, is it isn't that we're winning 10 championships and then we have 10 teams that are just bad. It's really that we're trying to say, hey, we're all in this together. And I think one of our big pillars as we hire is we're one team. So it's not Hope Football or Hope Swim and Dive or Hope Track and Field. It's Hope Athletics, and we're one team, and we're all trying to kind of work together for that. And so when one wins, we all win. And when one loses, we all lose. And then he talked about that we finished 20th nationally in the Learfield Cup, which again is cumulative of anyone who makes the national tournament. So that's kind of the difference between the Commissioner's Cup is all of our teams versus you have to make the national tournament in order to score in the Learfield Cup. That's our 3rd highest that we've ever had in Hope Athletics. So we feel really proud of that. But here's sort of the deal. Every college and university in the country probably has those first 2 pillars. Like they're trying to graduate students and they want to win. And I would say what we're trying to do is to say, really hit on the 3rd pillar, which would be transformational experiences. And so we're trying to invest in our student athletes and change their lives for Christ and really forever. And we feel like the more we can invest in our student athletes and the more we're taking care of them, the more we're loving on them, the more we're walking with them, the more we're going to actually win. So, and we've actually seen that. One of my associate AD, Lindsay Engelsman, said that, you know, what we've kind of found is the more we've focused on transformation and impact on our students, the more successful we've become competitively. And I think there's something really to that when we do that. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of what we do with this. So Team 43, it's a new program we started a couple years ago. We recruited 25 cool people from the community, retired teachers, pastors, people from Hope, and we just assigned them to a team. And we said, you're not a coach, you're not a counselor, you're not a chaplain. You're just going to be there to hang out with the students. And we'll pay for you to take them out for lunch, take them out for coffee, and just invest in their life so they have somebody that they can walk with or another person that they can walk with. And so sometimes students are nervous to tell me something because they're worried about what's going to happen. You know, is it going to affect my playing time? They're sometimes definitely nervous to talk to their coach for the same reason. But this just gives kind of another example. Last year, we had over 500 individual meetings with student athletes, with people from the community through this program. And so we're really proud of that one. The SEED program, we send 4 multi-sport teams overseas in the summer. We have a donor who graciously gives so that they can have their life impacted. We send them all over the world. We went to Costa Rica, Zambia, Kenya, and the Dominican last summer. So we send about 60 student athletes along with about 15 to 20 coaches and staff people all over. This program has just been amazing in terms of that. And what they do is they go out and it's sport ministry. So they go out and they play sport with kids in other communities, the language barriers there, and they wind up connecting with them on that level. And we've found that to be one of the more impactful things for students that have gone on that. We're one of the only Division III schools in the nation that has a full-time chaplain of athletics. Matt Margarone is there, and we're really proud of that. And then what we've been also working on is an organization called What Drives Winning that we bring in to work with our coaches. And they talk about actually like trying to help our coaches understand proper perspective of what actually is important in their life. And just to give you a glimpse of that, they started working with the University of Florida. And at the University of Florida, when they came in and they talked to us, they said every coach who won a national championship at the University of Florida, after they won it, was clinically depressed. Every coach. And so we started asking some more questions. They said, all these coaches have been sort of chasing after what I would call like worldly values, wins, money, salary, and they had sacrificed everything else in their life. So family, most of the time their spouse, and sometimes their values. And then they won it, and then they went, now what? Like, is this all there is? And in most respects, they didn't even get to enjoy it because you have to just start recruiting immediately. So as soon as you win a national championship, you're sending out texts and emails to every recruit you have to tell them that you won. And it just starts the whole cycle back over. And so we've partnered with this organization. It's actually been a really great thing for us to just help our coaches think about like what really matters and why they're doing what they're doing and those types of things. I would be remiss. We're not perfect. So like, we're not here being perfect with it, but we're really trying to, I think, adhere to these. And I think of trying to say, hey, we want students to be noticeably different people in a positive way when they walk across the stage at graduation. And we think that athletics can be a huge piece of that. So that I just wanted you to kind of see a little bit of what that is. So here's just a couple of quick things. Okay, so just if you didn't know this, D1 institutions, 365 institutions, 220,000 athletes. That just gives you, the numbers are rough. If you Google them, they'll be close to this. D2, would be 130,000, and then you can see that. So D3 has 431 institutions. So I think you could see how maybe we're proud of being 20th out of 431 institutions last year. But as they always say, you're only as good as your last game. And so if you don't win, then people are a little grumpy with that. D3, the focus of D3 really is kind of discover, develop, dedicate. And here's just a couple of sort of facts that they do. Everyone knows it as the non-scholarship division. So there's no athletic scholarships that are provided. There is kind of merit-based aid and things like that. But basically the gist, if you wondered, of D3 is kind of understanding pretty clearly that all students should be generally treated the same. So whatever the general student body is getting, that's what the athletes are getting. And you shouldn't be kind of giving something on top of that that comes with it. And this one is obviously the least impacted, I think, by the NIL stuff. So we'll name, image, and likeness. We're here sort of for that. Here's just kind of a broad, I won't read all the slides, but this one I thought was important. The ability for student athletes to become paid endorsers and monetize their success outside of scholarships and financial aid. So cheating, like the ability for them to make money off themselves. Okay. And you could think, if Chris Webber is playing at the University of Michigan and they're making millions of dollars off him and they're selling his jersey in the bookstore with his name on the back, and they're making that, and he's not getting a dime from that. The purists would say he's getting a full ride scholarship and he's getting all of that. But that's really kind of where it went. So here's just a couple of things you may not know. An NIL agreement must include a quid pro quo. Means you actually have to do something for the money that you're getting. That's what they would say. Really hard to regulate, just so everybody knows. Cannot be contingent upon enrollment at Hope College. So you can't say, hey, we'll pay you and then you come here. They have to do that. Again, really hard to regulate. Compensation for athletic participation or achievement. It can enhance their value, but you're not supposed to take into account. So Clayton Dykehouse, who plays at Hope College last year, is a recognizable athlete on our men's basketball team. Not supposed to take into account whether he's good or bad or that type of thing. But nobody's giving an NIL deal to number 15 on the bench. Okay, that's generally what's not happening. And then there's just some basics that I think come on there about Hope College. So it gives you kind of an idea of sort of what it is. So when we go through this now, let me see here. So these right here, okay, I think on the screen you can see the picture. Those three. So Caleb Williams is now the starting quarterback for the Bears. Played at USC in Oklahoma. Shadur Sanders is the starting quarterback for Colorado right now. He is the highest paid endorser right now, NIL. So over $4 million a year is what he's making right there. And then Angel Reese, who's in the middle there, played at LSU. And then she plays in the Chicago Sky. I think when I was looking up some stuff, like I think her NIL at the end was about $1.7 million that she was making when it was coming. Now, we'll just kind of go through this just so you see. All divisions, the average NIL deal is $3,600. Okay. Now, the people on the screen skew that. So really, it's basically about $1,000. So if you're at the Division I level, that's about what they're getting is $1,000. At the Division III level, the average deal is $100. Okay. So that's not paying your $54,000 tuition. So when people are like, just do NIL at Division III and we're going to do that. And that doesn't take into account, there's actually very few people who are getting NIL deals at our level. You know, like I said, highest earners are making millions of dollars, and it's football and basketball. So I think there's a really interesting disconnect with like what we see in the media, and like then sometimes what's actually the reality. And the one interesting thing that's happening is there's all kinds of companies now that are trying to basically earn money off of us. So, and what they're doing is they're doing it in two cents. They're saying, hey, we'll provide education for you, your staff, and for all your athletes. Because there's some tax implications and stuff. If all of a sudden you're making revenue, there's tax implications that our students maybe wouldn't know, or those types of things. Or they're offering to do the compliance. So they're offering to make sure that students are complying with whatever they're expected to do. So we had like Shadur Sanders, I think, like I saw a commercial with him, like for Gatorade. So like he's a rep for Gatorade or for Nike. So those are obviously the bigger, higher end ones. Then there's, you have to be able to do that. What's happening with a lot of athletes is they're saying, we'll pay you $5,000, and then you have to send out a tweet once a month promoting our business. So you got to send out a tweet once a month that says, I love the Holland Peanut Store. It's great. You should go there. And then the peanut store is offering $500 a month or $250 a month, or they're offering like chocolate covered peanuts for you if you do this, which some students might like in that setting. And so I think, it just gives you a little bit of an idea of how skewed. And I think even for us, like with our coaches, there's some really interesting dynamics. Because they kind of think too, like sometimes, well, it's like free money, like this is going to help get students here and that type of stuff. And it's like, oh, the average deal is $100. So NIL opportunities, this is my opinion. I think there's what I would say is true NIL dollars. And I mean, I think if somebody has their name on the back of a jersey and we're selling it and we're making money off that, they probably should be able to earn a little bit of royalty, or they should be able to earn some money on that. Or if you work a camp or you start your own camp and you promote it as the Hope, Eli Schoonveld Hope basketball camp, he should be able to make that money, which he couldn't have in the past. Now he can. So camps, autograph signing, if you're going to do that, I think this is where it gets interesting for us. I don't want our student athletes to make money off signing an autograph for a little kid. Like, I think they should do that. I think they should do that because that's what we want our students to be, as opposed to doing that. But there's autograph signing. Obviously, there's the social media posts, personal appearances. So, hey, if you show up here and you rep Chick-fil-A, we'll give you a free sandwich, or we'll give you $50, or those types of things. And then I think there's like legitimate marketing and branding opportunities in the same way that people would market and brand their business, that type of thing. So I do think that there's probably some really true NIL stuff that I think is probably fair and appropriate, that in the past, because of the NCAA's reluctance to ever make a change, just didn't happen. And now it is. Now, here's the deal. This is the other part of NIL, especially at the D1 level, the Champion Circle Collective. So every Power 4 school has a collective, which I would just call everybody is just free money. So they're going to solicit every person in this room, if you're alums of Michigan, and they're going to say, if you want to have a national champion team, you're going to give to this collective, and they're going to collect 10, 20, 50, $100 million. And then they're going to dole that out to recruits. So again, there's no way to really regulate this at the NCAA level, because as soon as they try to regulate it, somebody takes the NCAA to court right now, and they always lose because they say, hey, you're taking away opportunities for people to make money. And so what's really happened at the Division I level is it's whoever has the most money. And then students, instead of saying, hey, I want to go to Michigan or Michigan State or Indiana or Iowa or whatever, because I love their coaches, I love their facilities, I love their programs, the first question they say is, how much are you going to pay me? So how, like what do you got for me? So I have a nephew who coaches at VCU, told me the best player on their basketball team they had to come up with $750,000 this year in order to keep him. Otherwise, he was going to transfer somewhere else. So, I mean, it's like crazy town, at least in my book. So collectives, outside entity, they're not allowed to be like connected. So the college or the university can't actually give that money. So they have these outside groups. A lot of times it's internal, like a staff member from the school would quit at the school and would go start running this collective. And then they would do that. And then they have all the contacts with the coaches, and the coaches would say, hey, I've got so-and-so recruit. He needs $1 million, or he needs this. And the ironic piece is, some of you may know, like Hunter Dickinson played at Michigan here a couple years ago. And now he plays at Kansas. Hunter Dickinson probably is not a great professional. He doesn't have as many professional opportunities. He's just not going to make it in the NBA, but he makes $1 to $2 million a year to stay in college. So why you would stay? You know, Caitlin Clark, why did she come back to play last year? Made a lot more money at Iowa than she would have playing in the WNBA. She came out this year because she has the $28 million Nike contract and different things like that. So I call it free money, almost impossible to regulate, because the NCAA has their hands tied. And then this is what I would say. You know, we talk all the time about culture here, and we want to create this culture. It's just a culture killer. So I know somebody at Creighton with their men's basketball program. They have 14 people on their team, 10 turnover every year because they either transfer out or they bring in other transfers. So in terms of like, if you're trying to build a culture of, hey, you're going to be here and this is how we're going to do things and whatever, it's really almost impossible. And it's just trying to like bring people together. And so they're like coaches like Tony Bennett are having to create, like, it's just a whole new world. And I think that's why you're seeing some people getting out. I think, you know, Nick Saban, obviously, he was 70, but I think he still had a lot in his tank. And I think the same type of thing, like, this is just ridiculous. I've got to kind of re-recruit and to do all these types of things. So that gives you a little bit of NIL. Let me give you, I'm gonna try to give you, like, as best I can, how do we get here, okay? So most of you are probably pretty familiar, right? The amateurism focus of the NCAA, Olympics, all of that, right? And then you've seen the trickle down, right? Now we have the dream team that comes in the Olympics, and so professionals can be there and all that type of stuff. So I think, like, kind of growing up, everything was about, hey, this is amateur, no pay, like, we're just here, we're kind of doing these things. 2015, Ed O'Bannon, he played, I believe, in, yeah, I would have to know. He played, I should know the date, but he played a long time ago at UCLA. He's a men's basketball player. Walked into his buddy's house, and his buddy was playing some his buddy's kid was playing some video game. And he saw his face and his image on the video game. And he said, I should be getting paid. Like, why am I getting no money from them using my likeness? And so he, along with some others, sued the NCAA. And that really, I think, kind of started the trickle of, like, where we're going today. And this is a poor thing to say on today, but government intervention, okay? What happened is then you start seeing different entities of government that were trying to get students to be paid. And as soon as the government kind of came in, they were unprepared and unknowledgeable about actually how this whole thing works and what the trickle down would be. But because they had a lot of power, they were able to start forcing court cases. There's even some cases now where they're trying to brand athletes as employees. So, like, we would have to pay employees. So if that would go through, then you have to, if you play basketball, all of a sudden it's 40 hours a week, and then you got to pay overtime, and you got to do all this kind of stuff as an institution. And so spent a lot of time, but the O'Bannon case really got it going. I think government started to push the NCAA and didn't feel like they were moving fast enough. And so they started creating laws and expectations. And then all of a sudden we moved. So in 2021, they adopted NIL. at the NCAA level, allowing to do this with no regulation. I mean, zero regulation. So it just became do whatever you want. I think when I was researching, Texas A&M, I believe, has an $850 million NIL coffer. So like Texas A&M was the highest of all of them, that had $850 million that they were raising from alums and donors and boosters to be able to do this. But that became the biggest problem. The NCAA really had to adopt something, but there was no regulations. And so then if you go back to Tony Bennett again, where he talks about you need a salary cap, you need some regulations on transfers, you need to do things like that, which in essence, we're treating it like it's a professional sport. And so my opinion, in the next 5 to 10 years, I think Division I is going to be basically a semi-pro or a professional entity, that they're going to create rules around that. And then I think they're also going to wind up, you're just associated with whatever the school is. So I think they'll still keep some of the enjoyment, the energy and that type of stuff. But I think it's going to be like a professional thing that kind of happens out there. D1 conference realignment, as you've all seen, the Pac-12 went away and everybody's leaving because they want to make more money. So why do UCLA and USC decide to fly to the Big Ten and play everybody over here? Because it's way more money than what they were getting before, which they think is going to be a way better deal. And that really has, again, created the whole focus is on money. And I think that's where I think there's really problems. And then the House settlement, which just actually happened probably in the last like 2 to 3 months. In essence, I won't bore you with all of kind of the details of what it is, but basically every school, as soon as this goes through, is going to be able to allocate $20 million a year to pay athletes on top of their scholarships. And this is at the Division I level. So again, my opinion, I think schools like Western and Central and some of the mid-majors are going to be kind of the odd people out. I think it's going to be really hard for them to compete with the transfer portal rules, which basically means if you're really good and you play at Western Michigan, they don't have the money to keep you. So you're a great quarterback. You do really well there. They develop you. And then Alabama calls and says, hey, we'll give you $2 million if you transfer to us. They're transferring, taking the money. And then Western and Central are just kind of left holding the bag with all of that. So I think the House settlement, it also, I think the way that will affect Hope is in the context of it changes the scholarship level. So right now you're allowed to have like 115, again, the numbers, 115 football athletes, okay, on your roster. They're only allowed to give 85 scholarships at the Division I level. Next year, that's supposed to go up to 105. So we sort of pride ourselves on like you win at a high level in Division III if you get Division I and Division II athletes who choose to come to Hope because of what we do. And they say, hey, I want to be a part of research, and I want to be a part of great academics, and I want to go to med school, and I want to play on really great teams. That's what we get. So we're kind of keeping an eye on how that plays out with the scholarships as they give a few more at the Division I level. So again, this is a quick version of this, but it gives you a little idea of sort of how it's really changed over the years. And it's kind of like our cell phones. It's changed like rapidly. So like in 5 years, it's gone from like 0 to 1,000 when you do that. So let's give you a little glimpse of Hope NIL. So we have about 50 athletes, I think, at last. They're mostly in-kind gifts. So they'll take a picture of themselves drinking a Body Armor and they put it online, and then Body Armor sends them a box of Body Armor and they can drink that. So, those types of things. You could see things where, hey, a local clothing store has them come in and put on something and take a photo and then put it out on social media. Those types of things are the majority of what happens. Limited to no cash. I would say in the last 4 years, I think we've had one student athlete that's received cash. for doing something for a local business that kind of goes on. We do, let me see if I can pull this up here. So you're required as an institution to have an NIL policy. Everybody has one. Ours is pretty generic. It's the same as everybody else's, but you can access it on our website here, which just gives kind of like all of the things, and then also talks about the NCAA policies, our policies of like, hey, you can't do something for gambling, you can't do something for alcohol, substances that are illegal, those types of things. And then you also, as a student, you have to you have to like let us know 7 days before it goes into effect. So you have to like declare that you're doing this. Again, not a lot of regulations. So if they don't declare, we have some stuff. It's not a huge thing here. So this one I think will be kind of interesting. There's really two ways that some of our students are making money. Actually, when I was walking over here, there's a football player I was asking about, and he actually said he makes a little bit of money off this. And so there's an organization we did partner with, so-called Influxer, and I think this is all out there. So I'm not giving away anything for Lauren, okay? But students can join Influxer, okay? And then you can have, you create your own kind of website, and the organization helps create it. And then basically for Lauren, they create all kinds of gear that people could buy with her name on the back. So Lauren Lee, looks like there's a pendant over there with her number on it. Those types of things, any type of a thing. And then there's just like, there is literally a, Lauren gets, I don't even know the percentage, but Lauren gets 60%, the college gets 10%, and the rest of it goes to this organization that's out there. And the reason why we partnered with this is it allows them to make money, which we're good with, okay? It's basically friends and family. I mean, it's pretty much like you giving your grandkids, just giving them $100 is really what I think, but you can wear your grandkids stuff that's out there. There's a little bit of money that comes into Hope. I think somebody just ran me the numbers this morning. I would say there's out off this website for Hope, there's $10,000 worth of apparel sold gross. Students have made $2,000 total, all of them together, and Hope's gotten $500 or something, somewhere in that vicinity. And so that gives you kind of one when we talk. And then the NIL club is, and this one's kind of funny. The quid pro quo work for this is you just promote the club. So I'll use my son, Eli. He's a basketball player here. You can join the NIL club. You send this to all your friends and family. Would you please donate $50 to my NIL club? And everybody throws in their $50. And then at the end of the month, they all have to like post, I love the NIL club. And then you get your $12.50 or like whatever comes with that. This one's really hard to regulate other than trying to, like, we just make them give us the information as best they can. They do make a little bit of money off of that. So it's kind of a interesting thing. So those bottom two are really the two that we most see here at Hope. And then I'll give you this is the other one that I find kind of offensive, but so this is Bethel University in Minnesota, but they basically, like, you can join this. So this is their school actually has this. So this is a D3 school where you can do this. And then they have they would have these students on here, and then it says, hey, do you want to work with me? And so then if you click on, you want to work with this Braden, then it says, like what, didn't let me do that here. Funny, the last time it let me, some of them go. Yeah, so like if you want to work with Jacob, okay, for $50, he'll make a social media post. So if Hasp wanted to put on there, we'll give Jacob $50, he would post, shout out to Hasp, way to go, you guys are amazing. and then he'd get his $50. And like, these are probably mostly what is happening at the D3 level. And I think, like, for me, that's the kind of stuff that we should be teaching our student athletes to be doing without, like, you should be able to send out a post to recognize a good organization or that type of stuff without having to ask for $50. And some of it, like, they get down to as much as, hey, if you want a birthday shout out. So if you want your grandchild to have a shout out from Eli Schoonveld, like, you could do that. And so it's just kind of gross, if I can be really honest, in my book. That's certainly an opinion. NIL, just so you know, realignment is happening at our level. Schools are changing. So that's a reality of they're moving to conference, and what does that look like? Schools are closing. There's a lot of D3 liberal arts schools that are starting to close, and then enrollment strategies. And I would say this, of all the schools in our league, we got 9 of us. There's probably 3 of us that I would say would land on just a more stable footing. The other 6 are all using athletics to build their enrollment. Okay, so at Adrian, just a sec. At Adrian, they have 52 sports. Okay, so they have bass fishing, they have cornhole, they have stunt, they have all these sports, and then they say to their coach, "Hey, you need to recruit 15 new freshmen every year, and if you don't, you're going to go on notice, and if you don't the second year, you're going to be fired." And so then they use that to be able to build their enrollment. And again, that's not critical of that, because they would say, "Hey, we would love to do it like Hope, but we don't have the ability to do that." And so, like, for Adrian, their enrollment in my time here has gone from probably 900 students to about 1,500. So it's been a really sustainable thing. President Docking at Adrian has a book out where he actually wrote a book about how you can use sport to kind of increase your enrollment. And so I only say that to say the financial realities of sport, like, play into that. So if that's how you're going to try to stay open, that's why you might put some extra money into it. That's why you might be doing more sponsorship agreements and that type of stuff. So, question, I think.
Am I right to interpret what you're saying is that you really don't have much control, and you've tried to set up a couple different mechanisms for student athletes to get the NIL like money here at Hope? Do they need permission to do other things? Do they come to you to say, "Hey, I want to do my own social media"? Or do they ever come and say, "Hey, you guys sell these football ticket annual subscriptions. I want access to that mailing list so that I can solicit myself"? How much control do you have over that, I guess?
I would say we aren't pushing NIL. We would probably push to help our student athletes if it's something that can make money. In terms of, if, like, an example for me would be, in probably 10 years ago, if a computer science major wrote a book, they could sell it, they could make money off it. No problem, just a general student. If they were an athlete, they couldn't really say, "Hey, I'm an athlete at Hope College, here I'm selling this book." Then they couldn't make the money because there's all these rules and regulations. So we would say now we want to help them in legitimate settings if it helps them earn a living or make some money or do those types of things. We would definitely have control over the mailing lists, and we would probably not ever share that or want people to solicit with our groups. The basic parameters are what I showed you on that website. And then they're supposed to let us know 7 days in advance to whenever a contract's going. And then we work with them a lot now to make sure we educate them, because there's a few, maybe the right word is more nefarious organizations that would get kids to sign contracts that would lock them into something for like 5 years that they didn't really realize because they didn't read all the fine print and all that kind of stuff. So we're trying to, like, not, if I can say, not sell our soul to to money. But we're also trying to make sure that in 2024, there are opportunities for students to do this. And so we've got to be able to help them keep themselves organized. So can I say no? So the question was, can I say no? We can say no. Yes. Yes. I'll just leave it at that. Yes, sir.
So in the Hope College NIL rules, it said they couldn't use the building image, the logo, things like that.
Correct. Without permission, I think was the first,
Okay,
is what it is.
because the Influxer thing, it's Hope College logo plastered over everything.
Yeah.
So isn't that also competing with your own like Hope College bookstore that sells all that kind of apparel?
Yep. I think that's one of the delicate dances that we have to work through. So like with all of that, we would, before we did anything with Influxer, we would talk to the bookstore to see, hey, what they're willing to do, what they want to do. They need to get our permission to use any branding or any facilities. And that way we have a little bit more control over the scenarios. But yeah, it's definitely, it's really hard to regulate, especially when you consider, at the Division I level, they're probably going to have a compliance person for every sport. So you're going to probably have a compliance person. You're going to have 20 compliance people for every sport, or a few of them together. We've got somebody who's got 0.10 FTE designated to trying to do compliance for all of this. And so it's a balance that's really hard.
I have a,
Where are we at? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
it strikes me that this could be extended where it could provide pressure on college or university professors that grades would be influenced by what these student athletes are doing. Do you think there's anything to that?
Well, I mean, I think that, I'm not an expert on that. I mean, I definitely think there's always conversation about sort of grade inflation and today's generation and some of those types of things. I would say at the Division I level, it's sort of just get them a degree, and there's probably not a whole lot of interest in too much of the academic portion. Again, that's probably a little bit too generalized, but like, here's an example. We toured something at Grand Valley last week. So Grand Valley, football, 7 a.m. till noon every day. So you can't take any class that's 7 a.m. until noon at Grand Valley if you're a football player. So, it's an interesting deal. And then it's like, well, what if all my major is only offered in the morning? Well, you probably have to come up with a different major. And I think that legitimately happens all the time. So I think it definitely could. I would just say the biggest thing for me is, I think anytime money becomes the primary deal, it's a bad deal. And I think money has just infiltrated athletics in a really bad way. And so we're, again, trying to kind of keep some guardrails. So, yes.
Did I hear correctly that it is how much money to go to Hope per year now?
I think the last one was $54,000. I think that includes room and board.
And athletes cannot get scholarships. Is that what I'm understanding for Hope?
They cannot get athletic scholarships,
Okay.
but they can get Hope Forward scholarship. They can get merit aid. They can get financial aid.
Right.
Just like, I would say, just like any other student. So it's, if you're a great basketball player, you don't get extra because we want you. You get the same as what everybody else would get, which is based on merit.
And this is just a little aside. I'm a retired physical therapist, and my first job was in Hawaii, and I was taking care of a former football player. He was now in his 50s, and he was pretty much disabled because of the injuries from football. And especially with something like football and maybe also soccer for head injuries, we're expecting these kids to put out how many hours a week into practice. And not only that, but the potential for bodily injury in something like football is great. So that is a lifelong injury that will keep going. So I just wanted to put that out there because I'm looking at the kids that are going to become adults who are going to be disabled.
Absolutely. And there was a concussion settlement that came from the NCAA brought on by former players trying to recoup money for some of the injuries and some of that kind of stuff. And you think, if you watch the Dolphins, this Tua Tagovailoa, it's a crazy world. He's still playing. So to try to pull him out, I'm guessing in 10 years, he's going to be regretting probably that he's still playing, would be my guess, when he can't do some things. So yeah, John.
Hope's Orange and Blue Fund. How is that used and who oversees that?
Yeah. I would say our team administratively, so it's probably led by me. The Orange and Blue Fund at Hope is kind of fundraising arm for those that want to give to support athletics. It's a general pot that we use for competitive enhancements, for transformational experiences, for trips, for different things like that. Pretty loosely defined, I would say anything to kind of enhance, but to give you a few ideas, we've sent some teams on transformational trips. The volleyball team went out to Boston, was doing something, exploring out there, educational. The volleyball team went to Gallaudet, which is a school for the deaf in Washington. So things that we feel are going to kind of help them grow. Some of the what drives winning stuff we take out of, that's how we would pay for things like that. So trying to invest in our coaches, the team 43, those types of things that we use Orange and Blue for, along with if we potentially need some increased pole vault poles, if I need some pole vault poles or things like that, that would enhance. And I would say, it's an interesting world because as you, if you hire great coaches, like coaches are needy, like in a good way, but they're needy. So it's always trying to kind of wade through, everyone, the latest and greatest, and say, hey, what do we need? What do we want? And then really trying to go back to our pillars does this meet what we're really trying to do in terms of transforming lives, is how we kind of decide on that. But that's where it is. And I would say that's been one of the interesting things when Dr. Boltman was here. He's the fundraiser, and you don't ever fundraise, and you don't even really ask about fundraising. Okay. I mean, like that was kind of the deal. And that's kind of how things were working. And now we're 16 years later, and it's kind of like, hey, like, yeah, you guys should do some fundraising, and you need to start raising a little bit of money to help offset costs, or you need to raise some money to do some enhancements that you would do. And I think, we've tried to be really responsible with it, but also to do some things. And I think that transformational slide I had earlier, try to really do some things that I think are separating us and differentiating us from other schools across the nation, and mostly centers around kind of transforming and impacting lives.
You kind of led into what I was going to ask, because it's the Division I coaches, they get paid crazy, right? The salaries for D1 coaches.
Yeah.
And so I can understand why kids, they're making, I think the rate of their, the increase in their salaries over the last 20 years has far outpaced anything else. I'm curious at what at D3, kids feel like they're playing, these coaches are making tons of money off them, how that impacts, the kind of the NIL stuff. But like at D3 level, do you feel that, I get the sense that you're saying coaches are here because they want to be here at Hope. So I can see that that's a little different, but I'm just curious about your thoughts about that.
Yeah. The ironic piece is we probably have a bunch of students that will graduate this year and make more than a bunch of our coaches. That's a legit deal here at Hope in their career. So they'll go out in their career, will immediately pay them more than probably half of our coaches, which is a good thing. That's not a negative, but I think that's sometimes where there's a misconception versus, Sharon Moore at Michigan is probably the highest paid employee of the state of Michigan right now, at $4 million or whatever he makes for his thing. And so I think there's definitely, we don't have those pressures, but that's where I think if the NCAA probably had been a little bit more flexible and on the ball, they probably would have started to try to shift rather than just hold a hard line of like, hey, we're not ever going to change, because you wind up with Coach A, I make $7 million. I recruit you, you come here, I get an offer for 9 million, I'm leaving. And then this kid's high and dry and it's a new coach and he doesn't want me. And there's all of that. So it's again, money, the love of money maybe is the root of all evil.
One of the things with student athletes becoming employees of the school, if you project out, one of the things I've heard is that schools are going to outsource major sports, right, to an entity that will manage the pay, manage everything else, because the schools don't want to pay benefits, pension, all that kind of stuff that actual employees have. They will license out their name, lease the stadiums, and just be done with it. And then that's that semi-pro that you were talking about. So they'll basically still get the revenues from the licensing and the leasing, but wash their hands of student athletes in terms of having them employees of the school.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely could see. I think most of the Division III stuff, all the language right now that we're getting from the NCAA is that all of the employee stuff is D1 and that they're going to kind of segment out like D3. So we haven't put as much into that, but if you look now, most Power 4 schools have a GM for all their sports. So they have a general manager for football who then is helping do all of the stuff you're saying, just like the Lions have a GM who's doing salary cap and doing all those types of things. And so there's definitely going to be that. And I think a lot of outsourcing. And so if any of you want to start a business, we could come up with a business where we start getting ahead of the game for some of that. But it's a really tough time for that exact reason, because that's you can't do it. And I think one of the fallouts at the Division I level that you're also going to see beyond farming it out is you're also going to see people just cutting sports. So like I could see schools that say we're going to have football, men's and women's basketball, and volleyball, and like those are our sports, and everything else is like a club. So go somewhere else to play softball, go somewhere else to swim and dive. And that's what I see coming. And I think particularly at the mid-major level, like I just don't see how Western or Central is going to be able to pay their track and field athletes and you absolutely have Title IX, which I didn't put in here, but is also a huge piece of kind of NIL that they haven't been able to regulate, which is why everybody has this outside entity. So then it's not put on the school. So we have an outside entity who's doing this collective where they're give them all the, you give the money from outside, and then the school isn't sort of technically liable from a Title IX standpoint. And I love sport. It's just not great. So question here.
Yeah, I'd be really curious to hear, in your opinion, what you believe is the tail that wags the NIL dog. And I come out of the context, and it is what it is, of Ohio State football, where the expectations annually are you win a national championship and you beat Michigan. And if you don't do that, the trickle-down effect economically is huge, because all of a sudden some donors, let's put it that way, will not give as much to the university. Every game that's played in Ohio Stadium has an economic impact on the city of Columbus and its suburbs that is just astronomical. So I'm just, and then I look at Ryan Day's salary. I look at 20 million that we spent last year on, NILs to get kids into the transfer portal. So,
and then you lose to Oregon, right? And then everybody's all upset,
by
right?
one,
yeah, I know.
So yeah, but you would have thought that the end of the world was coming.
And you think at a Power 4, okay, so Ryan Day, I don't know it, but his record is as good as about anybody in the country in his 5 years or however long he's been there. He just hasn't beat Michigan and he hasn't won a national championship. And so now you're on it. And so I think, I don't have the answers on which is wagging. I just think the NCAA was trying to like hold to like 1980s standards kind of like, we're amateurs and this is what we're going to do, instead of like saying, hey, like the world is changing and we could, like, I think they could have come up with something that would have helped a little bit more to do that. But honestly, like we sometimes get that here, even with donors and stuff, where there's just expectations. And they'll say some things, about coaches or whatever, if you're not winning. And I think those are the trickle down that I think we're really fighting hard for, with kind of our pillars of saying, hey, like, I will say that our coaches will never have their AD come in their office and say, if you don't win, you're getting fired. They might have their AD come in the office and say, kids are having a really bad experience. If it doesn't improve, you probably won't be here. And I think that there's a correlation, but I think that's one thing that we're trying to just, again, stay from. So I didn't really answer your question. I apologize, but yeah.
I have a question from one of our Zoom viewers. If some rabid fans of Hope basketball tried to form an NIL collective to support Hope's teams, could you stop them? Or could you accept the support within current NCAA rules or within Hope's policies and values?
We could put up a good fight to stop them, but I don't think that we could. I think technically, if we wanted to, we could form a collective and we could do that. So a large donor comes in, says, I'm going to give you $1 million, $100,000 a year. We'll form this collective, and they're going to do that. Like, that could happen. I think that would be an internal probably discussion, like with the VPs and all of that, of how that would be. I would also say this, and most of President Schoonveld, the vision of Hope Forward and some of that. There's just some conversations of, hey, in essence, Hope Forward like has some level of like NIL, like where you're providing relief for the tuition. So, there's some interesting things that, like, when we talk about, just to be prepared of like, hey, is there a unique way that we could do this? But it's really, really hard. So like I'll use, we have a basketball player who wasn't highly recruited. Okay. So if you're doing NIL, we probably wouldn't have given him money if we were doing it. He becomes a 2-time all-conference player. Well, then what do? Like, after he becomes all-conference, then he's like, well, I want money. So now all of a sudden, and then it's like in the locker room, hey, this kid's getting a lot of money, but he's not really playing, and this kid's getting some. And so there's like, as sometimes as easy as it seems like, hey, just giving money will do that, then I think there's some kind of a trickle down that's going to be maybe a negative piece of that. And I think that's the stuff we're not actively pursuing collective. We're not actively doing any of that, but we are having conversations to see what it looks like, to make sure. I believe that one of our, we do have a school that we compete against that has some limited collective that is, we've heard, is actually providing some money for some of their athletes. That's unconfirmed, but that is what we have heard, that they're doing some of that. And I think that's just kind of, a smaller, the coach has 10 buddies who all throw in $10,000, and then they do some stuff like that. So it's a tough deal. Question here.
One of the things that I see as a positive out of all of this is you take a look at what happened at Michigan with Weber and that whole crew. Think of that would have solved a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Because Weber had his hand underneath the table and he was taking money. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. And it's the same. if I'm given $100,000, but I can snake out 200,000, like then that's probably what I want to do. And if I can get 200,000, I want to do 3. So I don't know where it really ever ends, which is where I think kind of the salary cap piece comes in. Let me just, Dennis, you got one more, and then I'll quick finish it.
I'm hesitating to ask it, but I think I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. Does Division III have a policy relative to transgender athletes?
I mean, I would say the NCAA has some policies, but
Okay.
obviously that's because that's a hot button issue with
Yeah.
all that's going on out
Yeah.
in the Mountain West. Some there. So there's definitely discussions that are going on with that, but I couldn't tell you exactly what it is right now. So let me, I want to end because I think hope is amazing. Here's really what I think we're trying to focus on. We're trying to hire and retain coaches of excellence who live out the mission. I think we have the best coaching staff. I'm so happy to work with them. I think that they understand their craft, so they're great coaches, X's and O's and that type of stuff, but they just love hope and they love what's going on. And I think for us, I think that's the best way for us to continue to compete at a high level. I think we got to stay focused on our pillars of Hope Athletics, academic success, competitive excellence, and transforming lives is key. And I think, again, I put focus on the and. It isn't just academic success or just winning or just transforming, like it's all of them. And I think that's the piece for us is we believe that we can kind of do all of that. And we also believe that actually when we focus on those 3 and we provide, let's say, Evan Thomas, the ability to come here and do research, be a scholar, okay, go to med school and be an All-American basketball player, that's a pretty big draw. Probably more than $100 for an NIL or $1,000 or those types of things. So that's, I think, what we're doing. And I think vigilantly pursue the mission of hope is, I think, critical. And then last, the last 2, strategically fundraise to enhance and differentiate ourselves. And so I think that's some of the things that we're doing. And then I think one of the biggest things we talk about a lot is stay differentiated from the other 430 institutions in the country. And I really do think we have something that's different. And like we've got the spiritual dimension, we've got great academics, we've got a great town, we've got great community, we lead the nation in attendance in things. We've got amazing student athletes that do that, and we're being successful, in our craft. And so I think that that's a really interesting piece. I think I'm going to just hold on the video. What I would say is this, and then we got 10 minutes for if there's any more questions. There's a couple of videos, maybe you've seen them, just giving you a little more glimpse into kind of Team 43 and what we're doing, but I think gives you a perfect vision. It's on our website to just sort of see what I think really separates us. And I think with what's going, we're trying to win. We're not perfect. We got kids making bad choices. We're doing things that aren't great all the time. But I think really in the end, I think our real focus is continuing to say, hey, how do we honor the Lord? How do we do the best we can and still kind of pursue that excellence? And I think if you get a chance to look on, our video team just does a great job of putting some really well done videos that share, I think, inside the heart that happen every day. So we've got a coach who is in season, and we've got to sit together with a kid who's struggling, just having a hard time, and we get mom and dad in there, and we get counselors, and we get all this, and he doesn't care one bit about the sport. He just wants to, hey, how do we help you get out of here and be successful in life? And I think I could give you story after story of how our coaches are doing that. And I think, having a community that supports and really loves on them is just really, really more valuable than I think the people in this room know all the time. And so we're really grateful for that, grateful for the introduction from Dr. Frost. I'm willing, I think we have a few minutes if there's any other questions.
How many coaches are Hope graduates?
Ooh, that's putting me on the spot. We have 16 head coaches. I'm gonna guess, I haven't counted them. I think we probably have about 10 that are Hope. So when we hire right now, though, we would say, you don't have to be a Hope grad, but you got to be a Hope person. So like, that's what we would say. Like, you don't have to be a Hope grad. That's not a prereq, and that's just not always possible. But you really have to understand what this place is all about and what we're trying to do. And if you're coming in here and you're a Lone Ranger, or you're coming in here and it's win at all costs, or you're coming in here and you don't want to work kind of as a team, it's not even so much of like, we don't want you. You're just not, it's just not going to work. And so I think that's it. And then, our assistants, I mean, we probably have 40 assistants that are probably grads, would be my guess, or somewhere in that vicinity. So yeah, go ahead.
Do our coaches, are they full, do they teach as well?
So our coaches probably make from $3,000, well, actually volunteer, but $3,000 to maybe $100,000, depending on longevity and degree and those types of things. Because we have kind of the teacher coach, so we have some that are coaching and are also tenured faculty and different things like that. So yeah, I didn't answer your question fully. You remind.
Outside of Hope, another job that also.
Yeah. If you're a full-time coach, you have a secondary duty, whether that's teaching, or like Brian Morehouse runs the DeVos, our softball coach runs the Dow, different things like that. So everybody will have a secondary duty. That's a head coach. And then we do have, trying to think of what we have. Our golf coaches are both part-time. Our lacrosse coach used to teach at North Muskegon and then retired, and now he's doing some teaching here for us. So yeah, Mike is doing that. And I think that's maybe it, just our golf coaches. I feel like I'm missing somebody. So sorry, go ahead.
Call me old fashioned, but I thought the purpose of college was to get an education. And so as I ponder what's going on at Division I versus Division III, do you think there's going to be an issue at Division I eventually where the faculty at some schools going to just go on strike and just say, hey, we want our share of the pie too?
I think you will. I think it goes back to the comment up here of to have $100 million football program. Some of that money's coming back to the institution. And so, one of the funny things is you sometimes get at those schools where like, let's say the softball team is really mad because the football team gets everything. Okay. Then you'd say, okay, if the football team doesn't get anything, then softball really doesn't exist, because softball is not a non-revenue sport. And so they're not taking in any money. So there's, I think it's always kind of be careful what you wish for with it, but I think you're totally right that could happen. And I think you'll see in the next 5 to 10 years, Division I athletics are going to have some really major changes. And I mean, we've already really seen it in the last couple with kind of all the realignment and some of that. So yeah, hang on, go ahead.
I'm curious your opinion on the future of NCAA. And certainly it's taken a tainted, or had some over the last, with all this and with.
Yeah. I mean, I think the funny thing about the NCAA is actually made up of member schools. So every year we go, there's 430 schools. We go to the convention. We adopt new legislation. So we're in essence the NCAA. So it's kind of funny how the NCAA has gotten this bad rap from schools. And so I think it's just real, like even in our league, we wind up probably voting in the opposite of 90% of the schools in our league for almost every decision, because we just have a completely different Like, we're not trying to build our enrollment through athletics. And so when we make decisions, we're trying to say, hey, like, there's missed class time, there's budget constraints. Whereas other schools are like, well, it doesn't matter. We need to do this because we need students. And so I don't know. The NCAA will shake up for sure. Charlie Baker is the former governor of Massachusetts, who's the president of the NCAA, and he's in there in part to try to smooth out some of the government intervention and some of that. And he's done a pretty good job so far, I think, overall, even though it's a really tough environment. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is just an anecdote, not a question. But to your comment, I have a very close friend who played on the 1961 Ohio State football team, and they won the Big Ten and did not go to the Rose Bowl because the Ohio State faculty voted against their going to the Rose Bowl. And that caused a huge uproar in Columbus, from what I understand. I did not live there then, but just really interesting about how all this shakes up and how it shakes out, but all this changes too.
Now, I could be wrong on this, so maybe somebody who's Hope would know this. Our 1984 team at Hope is the only team, I think, that's been undefeated. Okay, we just recognized them at homecoming. I believe that Coach Smith and DeVette and those guys made the decision to not go to the national tournament, even though they were undefeated. So I think that might be the case. Whereas, like, you wouldn't have me as the AD if I told Peter Sturzma he wasn't going to the national tournament in a couple of years. So, or I mean, in a couple of weeks. So, assuming we win. Yeah. Yeah. Lloyd Brady for sure. Yeah, go ahead.
It wasn't long ago that when listening to a broadcast on the radio or on television of a football game, for example, the play-by-play announcer might name the player that made the tackle and say he's from East Lansing, Michigan. These days, it's much more common to have the commentator say that he's a transfer from SMU or he's a transfer from another school. And I'm beginning to understand why that is. Just last weekend, I became aware that one player has played at 4 different schools in 4 years. And the portal appeals partly because of the opportunity to play perhaps more for a better school, but there's also a lot of money involved, I suspect.
Yeah.
So let me ask you about this. Have we gone too far when we realize that the Oklahoma State Cowboys football helmets have a QR code on them that allows spectators to donate money to that player's NIL fund?
Yeah, that's a great question. That would be a good question for you guys to ponder if that's too far. But I think that, you know, personally, I mean, I think it's way too far. And I think, like, that's what's becoming so problematic is the transfer, portal. We don't have as much issue, and we've benefited from it too. So, and I'm not taking away, but the transfer stuff for us right now has really been COVID related for the most part. So, like, Trine University won the men's basketball national championship last year. You know, had 3 transfers, but they have a grad school. You got the COVID year; they could all do that. And you know, they started the transfer portal here a few years back, which makes it way easier to kind of find out who's in there and all that kind of stuff. So I would say the QR code to me goes really too far. Quite ingenious of Oklahoma State when you're trying to, like, draw people in to be able to do that. And I think that's the interesting thing. If I go back to Tony Bennett, that's what's driving people out, because if you're a more, like, I would say, a more traditionalist in terms of athletics and how it's supposed to work, you just don't want to do that. And I mean, I can hardly figure out the PowerPoint, let alone the QR code. So
Last question.
Now, this is just kind of an anecdote, which will be interesting speaking to Hope and to Calvin sports. I was a 68 to 71 Calvin soccer player, and Michigan State, who's way bigger, beat us 1-0. Hope, which is much smaller than MSU, beat them, and we're never invited to play Michigan State again, either team.
Yeah. And to end, the funny thing is, we love to play in some sports because you get a guarantee. So like if we go down and we play Indiana, like we did a few years back, then we get a check. So I'm always like, hey, Greg, like, let's get some games, like, so we can get a check or whatever. But then it also is kind of a recruiting piece and all of that. Now that's just changed so much, since really, again, I would say last 20 years. So
Thank you, Tim, very
Yeah.
much. Great
sorry. Thank you.
presentation.
Yeah. No.
There's no limit.
Nope. So you do have the kind of
Go, 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 go.